Welcome, gentle soul, to this tranquil journey through the sands of time, where we'll drift together through 1,000 years of pharaonic splendor. Tonight, as the world grows quiet around you, I invite you to close your eyes and let the whispers of ancient Egypt carry you toward peaceful rest. Whether you're seeking solace from a restless day or simply longing to slow the rhythm of your thoughts, you've found sanctuary here among the eternal stories of the Nile. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight, what distant corner of the world has brought you to these ancient tales, and what time the stars mark as you settle into this moment of calm. It amazes me how these timeless stories can unite strangers across continents and centuries, binding us together in the shared human need for wonder and rest. If these gentle historical narratives bring you the peace you seek, consider joining our community of fellow travelers who find comfort in the echoes of ages past. This isn't mere fantasy or legend spun from imagination. This was the lived reality of the most powerful civilization the ancient world had ever known, where god-kings ruled from golden thrones and commanded the devotion of millions along the fertile banks of the great river. For over 3 millennia, these divine rulers shaped not just the destiny of Egypt, but the very course of human history itself. Have you ever wondered how a civilization could maintain unbroken royal lineage for longer than most modern nations have existed? The answer lies in the sacred mysteries we're about to explore together, in the shadowed chambers of temples where priests whispered secrets that could elevate mortals to godhood, and in the ingenious systems of power that sustained the most magnificent kingdom the world had ever witnessed. What I'm about to reveal will transform your understanding of ancient leadership, divine authority, and the delicate balance between earthly power and cosmic responsibility. These weren't merely rulers wearing elaborate crowns and commanding vast armies. They were living bridges between the mortal realm and the eternal, vessels through which the gods themselves governed the affairs of humanity. Tonight, we'll walk together through gilded palace halls where destiny was decided with the stroke of a reed pen, witness coronation ceremonies that literally transformed human beings into living deities, and discover how an unbroken chain of sacred kingship created the most stable government in human history. You'll meet the real people behind the legends, understand the intricate rituals that maintained cosmic order, and learn why the pharaoh's divine nature was considered essential for the very survival of civilization itself. By the time our journey concludes, you'll see the pyramids, temples, and treasures of Egypt in an entirely new light, understanding them not as mere monuments to vanity, but as vital components in a sophisticated system designed to maintain the eternal balance between heaven and earth. But before we enter the sacred realm of divine kingship, let me paint you the magnificent backdrop against which this 1,000-year drama would unfold. Picture, if you will, the Nile Valley in the year 3100 before the Common Era, when the first pharaoh united the two lands of Upper and Lower Egypt into a single, mighty kingdom. The great river flowed, as it had for millennia, bringing life to an otherwise barren desert landscape, creating a narrow ribbon of emerald fertility that stretched nearly 700 miles from the Mediterranean Sea to the granite cataracts of Aswan. Along this sacred waterway, scattered settlements of farmers, craftsmen, and traders had flourished for countless generations, developing sophisticated systems of irrigation, complex religious beliefs, and remarkable artistic traditions. But they remained divided, often warring amongst themselves, their potential greatness fragmented across dozens of independent territories and competing tribal loyalties. The transformation that was about to occur would be nothing short of miraculous. In the space of a single generation, these disparate communities would be forged into the most powerful and enduring empire the ancient world would ever know. The catalyst for this unprecedented unification was a figure whose very name has echoed through history as the embodiment of divine authority and royal power. King Menes, known to later generations as Nama, stood at the confluence of prehistory and recorded time, the first mortal to successfully claim dominion over both the papyrus marshes of the Delta and the desert cliffs of Upper Egypt. His conquest was not merely military, though his armies were formidable, nor purely political, though his strategies were brilliant. It was fundamentally spiritual, rooted in revolutionary concepts about the nature of kingship that would define Egyptian civilization for the next 3,000 years. The white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt had been separate symbols of regional authority for centuries before Menes appeared on the stage of history. Local rulers wore these crowns as badges of earthly power, governing their territories through combinations of personal charisma, military strength, and religious tradition. But Menes understood something profoundly different about the nature of legitimate authority. He recognized that true power came not from conquering territory or commanding armies, but from becoming the living embodiment of divine will on earth. When he united the two crowns into the double crown of unified Egypt, he wasn't simply combining political symbols. He was creating an entirely new form of government based on the revolutionary idea that the king was not merely appointed by the gods, but was himself a god walking among mortals. This transformation of royal authority from earthly leadership to divine incarnation would prove to be one of the most successful political innovations in human history. The pharaoh became Horus, the falcon-headed sky god, made manifest in human form. He was the living son of Ra, the sun god, carrying within his mortal body the eternal essence of cosmic order itself. The implications of this divine kingship were staggering in their scope and complexity. Every decision the pharaoh made carried the weight of cosmic significance. His words became divine commands that could not be questioned or disobeyed without risking the fundamental stability of the universe. His health and well-being were directly connected to the prosperity of the land, the flooding of the Nile, and the harmony between heaven and earth. When Menes established his capital at Memphis, where the Nile Delta begins, he wasn't simply choosing a convenient location for administrative purposes. He was creating a sacred center where divine authority could be properly exercised and maintained. The royal palace became a temple, the throne room a holy sanctuary, and the daily routines of royal life a series of religious rituals designed to sustain the cosmic order. The early pharaohs understood instinctively that maintaining divine authority required more than impressive ceremonies and magnificent architecture. They needed to create systems that could reliably identify, train, and install their successors in ways that preserve the sacred nature of kingship across generations. The solution they developed was both elegant and sophisticated, combining hereditary succession with religious validation and popular acceptance. Royal children were raised from birth to understand their cosmic responsibilities. They learned not just the practical skills of administration and military leadership, but the complex theological principles that governed their divine nature. They studied the movements of stars and planets, mastered the intricate rituals required to maintain Ma'at, the cosmic principle of truth and justice, and developed the spiritual discipline necessary to serve as conduits for divine will. The process of royal succession involved elaborate ceremonies designed to transfer divine essence from one pharaoh to the next. These weren't mere symbolic rituals, but transformative experiences that literally changed the fundamental nature of the successor's being. Through sacred rites performed in the innermost chambers of temples, attended only by the highest priests and most trusted advisors, mortal princes were transformed into living gods. The coronation of a new pharaoh represented one of the most significant events in ancient Egyptian society, a moment when the entire cosmic order was renewed and reaffirmed. Preparations for these ceremonies began months in advance, involving artisans, priests, officials, and citizens from across the kingdom, in a massive collaborative effort to ensure the successful transition of divine authority. During these preparatory periods, master craftsmen would create the regalia that would adorn the new pharaoh during his transformation. The double crown, combining the white crown of Upper Egypt with the red crown of Lower Egypt, was fashioned with meticulous attention to both aesthetic beauty and symbolic significance. Every curve, every ornament, every precious metal and gemstone was chosen for its ability to channel and focus divine energy. The false beard, perhaps the most recognizable symbol of pharaonic authority, was crafted from precious materials and imbued with protective spells designed to shield the pharaoh from earthly harm while enhancing his connection to the divine realm. The crook and flail, symbols of the pharaoh's role as shepherd and protector of his people, were created through rituals that consecrated them as actual tools of divine governance. Meanwhile, priests throughout the kingdom performed purification rites and offered prayers to ensure that the gods would accept the new pharaoh and bless his reign with prosperity and stability. These religious preparations were considered absolutely essential, as any disruption in the divine order could result in natural disasters, foreign invasions, or civil unrest that might threaten the very survival of Egyptian civilization. The actual coronation ceremony typically lasted for several days, beginning with ritual purification of the pharaoh-elect in the sacred waters of the Nile. This cleansing was believed to wash away any traces of mere mortality, preparing the candidate's body to receive divine essence. The waters used in these ceremonies were collected from specific locations along the river that had been blessed by generations of priests and were considered to possess particular spiritual potency. Following purification, the candidate underwent a series of initiations designed to test his worthiness and prepare him for the responsibilities of divine kingship. These trials involved demonstrations of wisdom, courage, compassion, and spiritual insight that would prove his ability to serve as an effective intermediary between the gods and the people of Egypt. The climactic moment of the coronation occurred when the high priest of Ra placed the double crown upon the new pharaoh's head, while reciting ancient formulas that had been passed down unchanged since the time of Menes himself. At this instant, according to Egyptian belief, the mortal man ceased to exist and was replaced by the living god Horus, invested with all the power and authority necessary to maintain cosmic order and govern the kingdom according to divine will. The newly crowned pharaoh would then make his first official pronouncements, typically consisting of promises to uphold Ma'at, protect Egypt from its enemies, and ensure the prosperity of all his subjects. These weren't merely political speeches, but sacred oaths that bound the pharaoh to specific cosmic responsibilities and established the spiritual foundation for his entire reign. The transformation was complete, but the real work of divine kingship was only beginning. In the days following coronation, the new pharaoh would embark upon a ceremonial journey throughout his kingdom, visiting the major temples and administrative centers to receive the formal recognition of local priests and governors. This royal progress served multiple purposes, allowing the people to witness their new god-king in person, while providing the pharaoh with opportunities to assess the condition of his realm and make his first important decisions as divine ruler. These early journeys established patterns that would characterize pharaonic governance for centuries to come. The pharaoh traveled with an elaborate entourage that included not only his personal guards and court officials, but also scribes, architects, physicians, and religious specialists, whose expertise would be essential for effective administration. Mobile workshops accompanied the royal party, enabling craftsmen to create monuments, repair temples, and produce the constant stream of ceremonial objects required to maintain divine authority. At each stop along the route, local communities would present themselves before their god-king, offering tribute, reporting on regional conditions, and seeking royal judgment on disputes that local authorities couldn't resolve. These audiences provided the pharaoh with detailed intelligence about conditions throughout his kingdom, while reinforcing the personal connection between divine ruler and devoted subjects that was essential for political stability. The pharaoh's responses to these local concerns revealed the sophisticated balance between divine authority and practical governance that characterized successful Egyptian kingship. While his words carried the weight of cosmic law, effective pharaohs understood that their divine nature was best expressed through wisdom, justice, and genuine concern for their people's welfare, rather than through arbitrary displays of absolute power. During the reign of Djoser, third pharaoh of the Third Dynasty, we witnessed the emergence of royal administration systems that would define Egyptian governance for millennia. Djoser's reign, beginning around 2670 BCE, marked a revolutionary period in which the pharaoh's divine authority was expressed through unprecedented architectural achievements and innovative approaches to kingdom management that demonstrated the practical applications of cosmic kingship. The most visible symbol of Djoser's revolutionary approach to pharaonic authority was the step pyramid at Saqqara, the first monumental stone building in human history. This magnificent structure represented far more than royal vanity or architectural experimentation. It was a sophisticated theological statement about the nature of divine kingship and the pharaoh's role as mediator between earthly and celestial realms. Working closely with his brilliant architect and advisor Imhotep, Djoser created not just a tomb, but a complete sacred complex designed to serve as the pharaoh's eternal residence and administrative center in the afterlife. The pyramid's six-tiered structure symbolized the pharaoh's ascension through successive levels of divine consciousness, each tier representing a stage in his transformation from mortal ruler to eternal god. The construction of this monument required organizational capabilities that had never before been attempted in human history. Thousands of workers, from skilled stonemasons to simple laborers, had to be coordinated in a massive multi-year project that demanded unprecedented levels of planning, resource management, and technical innovation. The successful completion of the step pyramid demonstrated that divine pharaonic authority could mobilize and direct human energy on a scale previously unimaginable. But Djoser's innovations extended far beyond monumental architecture. He established administrative systems that divided Egypt into provinces called nomes, each governed by appointed officials who reported directly to the royal court. This centralized bureaucracy enabled the pharaoh to exercise direct control over local affairs while maintaining the personal connections with regional leaders that were essential for political stability. The nome system represented a masterful solution to the fundamental challenge of governing a geographically dispersed kingdom through divine authority. Local governors, known as nomarchs, served as the pharaoh's representatives in their territories, wielding his divine power on his behalf while remaining personally accountable to him for their decisions and actions. This delegation of authority preserved the pharaoh's godlike status while ensuring effective administration of day-to-day governmental functions. Each nomarch was required to make regular reports to the royal court, documenting everything from agricultural production and tax collection to religious observances and local disputes. These reports were compiled by royal scribes into comprehensive summaries that provided the pharaoh with detailed knowledge of conditions throughout his kingdom, enabling him to make informed decisions about resource allocation, military deployments, and religious policies. The scribal class that emerged during Djoser's reign would become one of the most important and influential groups in Egyptian society, serving as the intellectual backbone of pharaonic administration. These highly educated individuals mastered not only the complex hieroglyphic writing system, but also mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and law. They served as the pharaoh's eyes and ears throughout the kingdom, ensuring that divine authority could be effectively exercised even in the most remote corners of Egypt. Royal scribes developed sophisticated record-keeping systems that tracked everything from individual citizens' tax obligations to the kingdom's total agricultural output. These administrative archives, maintained in secure chambers within royal palaces and major temples, created an institutional memory that enabled successive pharaohs to build upon their predecessors' achievements and learn from their mistakes. The mathematical precision required for these administrative systems led to remarkable advances in Egyptian science and technology. Scribes developed decimal number systems, geometric principles, and astronomical calculations that enabled them to predict Nile floods, plan agricultural cycles, and design increasingly sophisticated architectural projects. These intellectual achievements were seen not as secular learning, but as divine wisdom channeled through the pharaoh's sacred authority. During the 4th dynasty, beginning around 2613 BCE, pharaonic power reached unprecedented heights under rulers like Sneferu, Khufu, and Khafre, whose reigns marked the golden age of pyramid construction and the apex of Old Kingdom civilization. These pharaohs didn't simply inherit divine authority, they actively expanded and refined it, creating increasingly sophisticated expressions of cosmic kingship that would inspire awe and devotion for thousands of years. Sneferu's reign demonstrated the evolving relationship between pharaonic authority and architectural achievement. His construction of multiple pyramids, including the Bent Pyramid and the Red Pyramid at Dashur, represented experimental approaches to creating perfect geometric forms that could serve as eternal residences for divine kings. Each structure incorporated lessons learned from previous projects, reflecting the pharaoh's commitment to continuous improvement in his sacred responsibilities. The technical challenges involved in these construction projects required the pharaoh to mobilize not only vast numbers of workers, but also the kingdom's most talented engineers, mathematicians, and artisans. Royal workshops developed new tools, techniques, and organizational methods that advanced human knowledge while serving the pharaoh's divine purposes. The successful completion of these monuments demonstrated the pharaoh's ability to command both human resources and natural forces in service of cosmic order. Khufu's Great Pyramid at Giza represents the ultimate expression of 4th Dynasty pharaonic authority, a structure so precisely engineered and magnificently scaled that it has inspired wonder and speculation for over 4 millennia. Standing at over 480 feet tall and containing more than 2 million stone blocks, each weighing several tons, this monument required organizational capabilities that seem almost impossible even by modern standards. The construction of the Great Pyramid involved not just the mobilization of massive human resources, but also the development of sophisticated logistics systems that could transport, position, and assemble materials with extraordinary precision. Workers had to be fed, housed, and organized into specialized teams capable of performing complex tasks in perfect coordination. The pharaoh's authority made this unprecedented cooperation possible, transforming individual efforts into collective achievement on a truly divine scale. Archaeological evidence from the Giza complex reveals the elaborate infrastructure that supported pyramid construction, including workers' villages, bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities that provided for the needs of thousands of people involved in these sacred projects. The pharaoh's responsibility extended to ensuring not only the successful completion of his eternal monument, but also the welfare and safety of every person who contributed to its creation. To its creation. The relationship between pharaoh and worker during these monumental projects reveals the profound humanity that existed within divine kingship. Royal records from Khufu's reign describe elaborate systems of worker rotation that ensured no individual labored beyond their physical capacity, medical corps that attended to injuries and illnesses, and generous rations that included meat, bread, and beer distributed according to each person's contribution to the sacred work. These weren't merely practical arrangements born of administrative necessity, but expressions of the pharaoh's divine responsibility to care for all his subjects. The God King understood that his cosmic authority was validated not through arbitrary displays of power, but through the willing devotion of people who recognized his genuine concern for their welfare. This mutual relationship between divine ruler and devoted subject created bonds of loyalty that sustained Egyptian civilization through centuries of challenge and change. The workers who built the Great Pyramid weren't slaves driven by whips and fear, as popular imagination often suggests, but skilled craftsmen and dedicated laborers who took pride in contributing to their God King's eternal monument. Graffiti discovered within the pyramid's internal chambers reveals work gangs with names like Friends of Khufu and Drunkards of Menkaure, suggesting a spirit of camaraderie and shared purpose that transformed backbreaking labor into acts of religious devotion. The pharaoh's divine nature was expressed not only through his ability to command such massive undertakings, but through his personal involvement in every aspect of the construction process. Khufu regularly visited the Giza site, consulting with architects, encouraging workers, and making decisions about design modifications that required both technical expertise and spiritual insight. His presence transformed the construction site into a sacred space where divine will was made manifest through human effort. The internal chambers of the Great Pyramid reveal sophisticated understanding of both engineering principles and religious symbolism that could only have emerged from the pharaoh's unique position as both earthly ruler and divine being. The ascending passages that lead to the king's chamber mirror the pharaoh's spiritual journey from mortal life to eternal godhood, while the precise astronomical alignments connect the monument to cosmic forces that governed Egyptian religious belief. The sarcophagus chamber itself, carved from single blocks of granite transported hundreds of miles from Aswan quarries, represents the pharaoh's final transformation from living god to eternal deity. Every measurement, every angle, every surface was calculated to facilitate the complex rituals that would ensure the pharaoh's successful transition to the afterlife, where he would continue to serve as intermediary between gods and mortals for all eternity. The completion of the Great Pyramid marked not just the end of a construction project, but the culmination of divine kingship expressed through human achievement. The monument stood as permanent testament to the pharaoh's cosmic authority, visible from vast distances across the Nile Valley and serving as constant reminder of divine power made manifest through earthly means. But even as these magnificent monuments rose toward the heavens, the pharaohs of the Fourth Dynasty understood that their divine authority required continuous renewal and validation through effective governance of daily life. The same organizational capabilities that enabled pyramid construction were applied to managing agricultural production, maintaining irrigation systems, conducting trade expeditions, and defending Egypt's borders against foreign threats. Royal archives from this period reveal the extraordinary attention to detail that characterized pharaonic administration. Records document everything from the number of cattle in royal herds to the precise amounts of grain stored in temple granaries, from the genealogies of provincial officials to the seasonal movements of Nubian trading expeditions. This comprehensive documentation enabled the pharaoh to make informed decisions about resource allocation while maintaining personal oversight of conditions throughout his vast kingdom. The pharaoh's divine nature was expressed through his ability to perceive patterns and connections that escaped ordinary human understanding. Seasonal flooding patterns, astronomical cycles, and economic trends were all viewed as manifestations of cosmic order that the God King could interpret and influence through his unique spiritual insights. This supernatural wisdom enabled pharaohs to anticipate problems before they became crises and implement solutions that seemed almost miraculous to their subjects. During the reign of Menkaure, builder of the third pyramid at Giza, we witnessed the emergence of more personalized expressions of pharaonic divinity that emphasized the ruler's accessibility and compassion alongside his cosmic authority. Menkaure's pyramid, though smaller than those of his predecessors, incorporated architectural innovations that reflected evolving concepts about the relationship between divine kings and their subjects. The pyramid complex included elaborate temples and causeways designed to accommodate public ceremonies, where ordinary Egyptians could witness their pharaoh performing the sacred rituals that maintained cosmic order. These architectural spaces created opportunities for direct interaction between God King and devoted followers, strengthening the personal bonds that were essential for political stability while reinforcing the pharaoh's divine status through magnificent ceremonial displays. Menkaura's approach to kingship emphasized the pharaoh's role as protector and provider rather than distant cosmic force. Royal inscriptions from his reign describe personal interventions in legal disputes, direct assistance to communities affected by natural disasters, and innovative policies designed to improve living conditions for ordinary Egyptians. These actions demonstrated that divine authority was best expressed through active concern for subjects' welfare, rather than aloof majesty. The transition from the 4th to the 5th dynasty, around 2494 BCE, marked significant evolution in pharaonic authority as political power became more distributed among competing factions, while divine kingship adapted to changing circumstances. The pharaohs of the 5th dynasty, beginning with Userkaf, maintained their cosmic status while developing new strategies for managing increasingly complex political challenges that tested the flexibility and resilience of Egyptian royal institutions. These later Old Kingdom pharaohs faced growing pressure from provincial governors who had accumulated hereditary power in their regions, wealthy priests who controlled vast temple resources, and ambitious court officials who sought greater influence over royal decision-making. The challenge was maintaining divine authority while accommodating these competing interests in ways that preserved political stability and prevented civil conflict. The solution developed by 5th dynasty pharaohs involved sophisticated balancing acts that distributed benefits and responsibilities among different factions while preserving the pharaoh's ultimate authority as divine arbiter of Egyptian affairs. Provincial governors were granted greater autonomy in local matters, but remained accountable to royal oversight for their most important decisions. Temple priests received expanded resources for religious activities, but were required to support royal policies and provide services to the crown. This evolution in pharaonic governance reflected deeper changes in Egyptian society, as the kingdom's wealth and complexity increased beyond what could be effectively managed through simple divine command. The pharaoh's role gradually shifted from direct administrator of all governmental functions to cosmic coordinator, who ensured harmony among competing interests while maintaining Egypt's fundamental stability and prosperity. The architectural achievements of 5th dynasty pharaohs, while less monumentally scaled than the Giza pyramids, demonstrated continued innovation in expressing divine authority through stone and symbol. Sun temples constructed during this period reflected growing emphasis on the pharaoh's connection to Ra, the sun god, whose daily journey across the sky provided a powerful metaphor for royal responsibility and cosmic renewal. These solar temples incorporated open courtyards and elevated altars that enabled large-scale public ceremonies celebrating the pharaoh's divine nature and his role in maintaining the cosmic order that sustained Egyptian civilization. The architectural design encouraged popular participation in royal religious observances, while reinforcing hierarchical relationships that placed the pharaoh at the apex of both earthly and celestial authority. The reliefs and inscriptions that decorated these temples reveal increasingly sophisticated theological concepts about pharaonic divinity that emphasize the ruler's cosmic responsibilities alongside his earthly powers. Complex mythological narratives depicted the pharaoh's nightly journey through the underworld, his daily rebirth with the rising sun, and his eternal role as protector of Mahat, the fundamental principle of truth and justice that governed all existence. As we drift deeper into this ancient realm, the whispers of these god-kings grow softer, yet more profound, their stories weaving together like golden threads in the tapestry of time. The pharaohs of the 6th dynasty would face challenges that would test every aspect of the divine kingship their predecessors had so carefully constructed, as the eternal order they represented encountered the inexorable forces of change that shape all human endeavors. But those tales of transformation and renewal await us in the gentle hours ahead as we continue our peaceful journey through the sacred mysteries of pharaonic Egypt, where mortal ambition and divine purpose dance together in the eternal rhythm of the Nile. creating wonders that still inspire awe in our modern age. Let these ancient voices guide you toward restful sleep, carrying their timeless wisdom into your dreams, where the boundaries between past and present dissolve like morning mist along the sacred river. The 6th dynasty, beginning around 2345 BCE, would witness both the greatest expressions of pharaonic authority and the first serious challenges to the divine kingship that had sustained Egypt for nearly 8 centuries. As we settle deeper into our nocturnal journey, let us explore how these later Old Kingdom rulers navigated the delicate balance between cosmic responsibility and earthly reality, their reigns marking both triumph and transformation in the eternal story of Egyptian civilization. Pharaoh Teti, the founder of the 6th dynasty, inherited a kingdom that had grown beyond the simple administrative structures of earlier periods. The nome system established by his predecessors had created a network of provincial governors who possessed considerable local authority, while the priestly class had accumulated vast resources through centuries of royal patronage. These developments required new approaches to divine kingship that could accommodate distributed power while preserving the pharaoh's ultimate cosmic authority. Teti's response to these challenges demonstrated the sophisticated political intelligence that characterized successful pharaohs throughout Egyptian history. Rather than attempting to suppress the growing influence of provincial and religious leaders, he chose to incorporate them more fully into royal governance through expanded advisory councils and collaborative decision-making processes. This evolution preserved the pharaoh's divine status, while acknowledging the practical realities of governing an increasingly complex civilization. The royal court during Teti's reign became a magnificent theatre, where divine authority was expressed through elaborate ceremonies that emphasized both the pharaoh's cosmic nature and his accessibility to subjects who sought his wisdom and protection. Daily audiences in the throne room followed ancient protocols that reinforced hierarchical relationships, while providing opportunities for direct communication between God-King and devoted followers. These throne room ceremonies began before dawn, with purification rituals performed by the pharaoh's personal priests, who prepared his divine body to receive the spiritual essence necessary for effective governance. Sacred oils and incense created an atmosphere of holiness that transformed the administrative space into a religious sanctuary where earthly concerns could be addressed through divine wisdom. The pharaoh's appearance in the throne room was itself a carefully orchestrated religious event. Adorned in regalia that symbolized his cosmic responsibilities, he embodied the living presence of divine authority made manifest in human form. The double crown united Upper and Lower Egypt in his person, while the ceremonial beard connected him to the eternal wisdom of his predecessors stretching back to the first divine kings. Petitioners who approached the royal throne underwent elaborate purification procedures designed to prepare them for direct contact with divinity. These weren't merely ceremonial requirements, but essential spiritual preparations that enabled ordinary mortals to communicate effectively with their God-King. The careful attention to ritual detail demonstrated that divine kingship operated according to cosmic laws that required precise observance for successful implementation. The pharaoh's responses to these petitions revealed the sophisticated balance between divine wisdom and practical judgment that characterized effective royal governance. Complex legal disputes, administrative challenges, and resource allocation decisions were addressed through processes that combined supernatural insight with careful analysis of evidence and precedent. The pharaoh's ability to perceive connections and patterns invisible to ordinary understanding enabled him to craft solutions that seemed miraculous to his subjects. Provincial reports delivered during these audiences provided the pharaoh with comprehensive intelligence about conditions throughout his kingdom. Nomarchs traveled to the royal capital with detailed accounts of agricultural production, trade activities, religious observances, and local disputes that required royal attention. These reports enabled the pharaoh to maintain personal oversight of his vast realm, while demonstrating his divine omniscience to impressed observers. The information gathered through these administrative processes was compiled by royal scribes into comprehensive archives that served as institutional memory for the kingdom. These records documented everything from individual citizens' genealogies to detailed maps of irrigation systems, creating databases that enabled successive pharaohs to build upon their predecessors' achievements while avoiding their mistakes. During the reign of Pepi I, which began around 2321 BCE, Pharaonic authority faced its first serious external challenges as Nubian kingdoms to the south and Asian territories to the northeast began asserting independence from Egyptian control. These threats required military responses that demonstrated the pharaoh's role as cosmic warrior, defending Ma'at against the forces of chaos that constantly threatened civilized order. Pepi I's military campaigns revealed new dimensions of pharaonic divinity that emphasized the god king's responsibility to protect Egypt's borders and maintain the cosmic balance that sustained his kingdom's prosperity. Royal inscriptions from this period describe elaborate pre-battle rituals in which the pharaoh personally blessed weapons and warriors, transforming ordinary military equipment into sacred instruments of divine will. The pharaoh's presence on the battlefield was believed to guarantee Egyptian victory through supernatural intervention that confused enemies and strengthened loyal forces. Battle accounts describe seemingly impossible tactical successes attributed to the pharaoh's ability to influence weather patterns, animal behavior, and enemy decision-making through his cosmic authority. These miraculous victories reinforced popular belief in pharaonic divinity, while demonstrating the practical benefits of divine kingship for Egyptian security. Military expeditions during Pepi I's reign also served important economic functions, securing trade routes that brought exotic goods and valuable resources to Egypt, while extending pharaonic authority into regions that had previously remained outside Egyptian influence. The pharaoh's divine nature enabled him to negotiate with foreign rulers as an equal representative of cosmic order, establishing diplomatic relationships that enhanced Egypt's international prestige. The wealth generated through these military and diplomatic successes enabled Pepi I to undertake ambitious construction projects that expressed pharaonic authority through monumental architecture. His pyramid complex at Saqqara incorporated innovative design elements that reflected evolving concepts about divine kingship and the pharaoh's eternal responsibilities in the afterlife. The internal chambers of Pepi I's pyramid were decorated with the first extensive collections of pyramid texts, religious inscriptions that detailed the pharaoh's transformation from mortal ruler to eternal deity. These sacred writings revealed sophisticated theological concepts about divine kingship that had been developed over centuries of royal experience, providing detailed instructions for the pharaoh's journey through death to resurrection as a cosmic god. The pyramid texts represented one of humanity's earliest comprehensive attempts to document religious beliefs and practices in written form. These inscriptions preserved ancient wisdom about the nature of divine authority, the relationship between earthly and celestial realms, and the complex rituals required to maintain cosmic order. Their inclusion in royal tombs demonstrated the pharaoh's responsibility to preserve and transmit sacred knowledge to future generations. The artistic achievements of Pepi I's reign extended beyond monumental architecture to include sophisticated relief sculptures, paintings, and decorative objects that expressed pharaonic divinity through visual symbolism. Royal workshops developed new techniques for working precious metals, carving stone, and creating jewelry that incorporated complex religious iconography designed to enhance the pharaoh's spiritual power. These artistic innovations reflected the pharaoh's role as patron of human creativity and technical advancement. Royal artisans were encouraged to experiment with new materials and methods, while maintaining the traditional symbolic systems that communicated divine authority to both literate and illiterate audiences. The resulting artworks served practical functions in religious ceremonies, while creating lasting testimonies to pharaonic greatness. The reign of Pepi II, beginning around 2278 BCE, would mark both the culmination and the beginning of the end for the Old Kingdom's system of absolute pharaonic authority. Pepi II's extraordinarily long reign, lasting over 90 years, provided unprecedented opportunities to refine and perfect the institutions of divine kingship, while also revealing the inherent limitations of systems based on individual authority and personal relationships. During the early decades of Pepi II's reign, pharaonic power reached new heights of sophistication and effectiveness. The young king inherited well-developed administrative systems, experienced advisors, and a kingdom that had achieved remarkable stability and prosperity under his predecessors. His divine authority was unquestioned, his resources seemed unlimited, and his subjects appeared completely devoted to their god-king's welfare. The royal court during this period became a magnificent center of learning and cultural achievement, where scholars, artists, and administrators collaborated in advancing human knowledge while serving pharaonic purposes. Royal libraries accumulated vast collections of texts on subjects ranging from medicine and mathematics to astronomy and engineering, creating intellectual resources that enhanced the pharaoh's ability to govern effectively while establishing Egypt as the ancient world's leading center of learning. Palace workshops during Pepi II's early reign produced artistic masterpieces that combined technical excellence with religious significance, creating objects that serve both practical and spiritual functions in royal ceremonies. Furniture, clothing, jewelry, and ceremonial weapons were crafted with extraordinary attention to detail that reflected the pharaoh's cosmic status, while demonstrating Egyptian superiority in material culture. The agricultural systems that sustained this royal magnificence reached unprecedented levels of productivity and efficiency during the early decades of Pepi II's reign. Improved irrigation techniques, selective breeding of livestock, and sophisticated crop rotation methods enabled Egyptian farmers to generate surplus production that supported not only the royal court, but also expanding urban populations and ambitious construction projects. Trade networks established under pharaonic authority extended Egyptian influence throughout the ancient world, bringing exotic materials and foreign technologies to the Nile Valley, while spreading Egyptian cultural and religious concepts to distant lands. Royal trading expeditions served both economic and diplomatic functions, establishing Egypt as the dominant power in ancient international relations. However, as Pepi II's reign extended beyond the normal lifespan of pharaohs, the very longevity that initially seemed to confirm his divine nature began to create unprecedented challenges for the system of personal kingship that had sustained Egyptian civilization for nearly a millennium. The king's advancing age raised theological questions about the relationship between divine authority and mortal limitations that had never before required resolution. Provincial governors who had been appointed by Pepi II in his youth gradually developed hereditary claims to their positions, creating power centers that operated with increasing independence from royal oversight. These local dynasties maintained formal loyalty to pharaonic authority while pursuing regional interests that sometimes conflicted with broader kingdom policies. The priestly class, enriched by generations of royal patronage, accumulated resources and influence that enabled them to challenge royal decisions on religious matters that had previously been considered solely within pharaonic authority. Temple complexes became virtual states within the state, controlling vast territories and populations while claiming divine sanction for their independence from secular oversight. Economic pressures created by decades of monumental construction projects, military expeditions, and elaborate court ceremonies gradually strained the agricultural and commercial systems that supported pharaonic government. Tax collection became more difficult as provincial administrators diverted resources to local projects, while maintaining reduced contributions to royal treasuries. Climate changes during the later years of Pepi II's reign brought reduced Nile flooding that affected agricultural productivity throughout the kingdom. These environmental challenges tested the pharaoh's divine authority in ways that had never before occurred, as subjects questioned whether their god-king's cosmic power was sufficient to maintain the natural order that sustained Egyptian civilization. The pharaoh's responses to these mounting challenges revealed both the strengths and limitations of divine kingship as a governmental system. His accumulated wisdom and experience enabled him to craft innovative solutions to unprecedented problems, while his spiritual authority provided stability during periods of uncertainty and change. However, the personal nature of pharaonic government meant that solutions were often temporary expedients rather than permanent institutional reforms. Royal records from the final decades of Pepi II's reign document the pharaoh's growing concern about succession planning and the preservation of divine kingship for future generations. The unprecedented length of his reign had created situations that had never before required resolution, as potential heirs aged beyond their prime while waiting for opportunities to assume royal responsibilities. The theological implications of an elderly pharaoh raised complex questions about the relationship between divine essence and mortal limitations that challenged fundamental assumptions about the nature of pharaonic authority. Royal priests developed new ritual procedures designed to maintain the king's spiritual effectiveness while acknowledging the physical realities of extreme old age. Palace ceremonies during Pepi II's final years emphasized the eternal aspects of pharaonic divinity rather than the temporal manifestations that had previously dominated royal presentation. The pharaoh appeared less frequently in public, while his divine presence was maintained through elaborate proxy systems that enabled continued governance despite physical limitations. As Pepi II's remarkable reign finally drew to its close around 2184 BCE, the kingdom he left behind retained the fundamental structures and beliefs that had sustained Egyptian civilization for nearly a millennium, but these institutions would soon face challenges that would test their resilience and adaptability in ways that would reshape the very nature of pharaonic authority. The transition from the Old Kingdom to the First Intermediate Period would reveal both the enduring power of divine kingship and its vulnerability to forces beyond even godly control. The death of Pepi II marked not just the end of an extraordinarily long reign, but the conclusion of an entire era in Egyptian history. The Old Kingdom system of absolute pharaonic authority, which had created the pyramids, unified the nation, and established Egypt as the ancient world's dominant civilization, now faced its greatest test as competing claimants to divine kingship emerged throughout the fragmented kingdom. Yet even as political authority fragmented and economic systems strained under the weight of change, the essential concept of pharaonic divinity survived these challenges, adapting and evolving in ways that would enable its renewal in different forms. The sacred principles that had sustained Egyptian civilization for 1,000 years would prove more resilient than the specific institutions through which they had been expressed, creating foundations for future resurrections of pharaonic power that would inspire awe and devotion for millennia to come. In the gentle darkness of our shared journey, these ancient echoes of divine authority whisper their timeless truths about power and responsibility, reminding us that even gods must adapt to the changing rhythms of time while maintaining their eternal commitment to the cosmic order that sustains all life. Let these pharaonic voices guide your thoughts toward peaceful rest as we prepare to explore the remarkable renewal of divine kingship that would emerge from the ashes of the Old Kingdom's collapse. The collapse of the Old Kingdom around 2181 BCE did not extinguish the sacred flame of pharaonic divinity, but rather scattered its embers across a fractured landscape where competing rulers claimed the cosmic authority that had once belonged to a single god-king. This period, known to historians as the First Intermediate Period, witnessed the remarkable resilience of divine kingship as it adapted to circumstances that would have destroyed lesser forms of government entirely. In the northern regions around Memphis, descendants of the Old Kingdom royal family maintained claims to pharaonic authority, while controlling diminished territories that represented mere fragments of their ancestors' vast domain. These northern rulers preserved the ancient ceremonies and maintained the traditional regalia of divine kingship, performing the sacred rituals that sustained cosmic order, even as their earthly power waned to shadows of former glory. Meanwhile, in the southern city of Thebes, ambitious local governors began asserting their own claims to divine authority, arguing that the gods had withdrawn their favor from the northern dynasties and invested it instead in new bloodlines more worthy of cosmic responsibility. These Theban rulers adopted pharaonic titles and symbols while developing innovative approaches to divine kingship that emphasize military prowess and popular support alongside traditional religious validation. The theological implications of multiple simultaneous pharaohs created unprecedented challenges for Egyptian religious thought. How could divine authority be divided without destroying the cosmic unity that pharaonic kingship was designed to maintain? Temple priests throughout the kingdom grappled with these questions while developing sophisticated explanations that preserve the essential nature of divine rule despite its fragmented political expression. Some priestly scholars argued that the gods had temporarily withdrawn from direct earthly involvement, leaving mortal rulers to compete for eventual restoration of true divine authority. Others suggested that cosmic order required periodic testing through conflict, with legitimate pharaonic power ultimately emerging through victory over false claimants. These theological debates reflected genuine attempts to preserve sacred principles while adapting them to unprecedented circumstances. The common people of Egypt, caught between competing claims to divine authority, developed pragmatic approaches to royal loyalty that emphasize local conditions over abstract theological principles. Communities supported whichever ruler could provide effective governance, military protection, and economic stability, regardless of their genealogical connections to ancient pharaonic bloodlines or their ability to perform traditional religious ceremonies. This popular pragmatism created opportunities for capable leaders to establish legitimate authority through demonstrated competence rather than inherited status. Provincial governors who could maintain irrigation systems, protect trade routes, and resolve local disputes gradually gained recognition as legitimate rulers, even without traditional pharaonic credentials or elaborate coronation ceremonies. The military dimension of divided pharaonic authority led to innovations in warfare that would influence Egyptian military organization for centuries to come. Competing rulers needed professional armies capable of rapid deployment and sustained campaigns, leading to developments in weapons technology, tactical organization, and logistical support that enhanced Egyptian military capabilities, even during periods of political fragmentation. Regional armies developed distinctive fighting styles, adapted to their particular geographic circumstances and available resources. Northern forces emphasized heavily armored infantry, suitable for battles in the flat delta region, while southern armies specialized in mobile cavalry tactics effective in the rocky terrain of Upper Egypt. These military innovations reflected the adaptive nature of Egyptian civilization under pressure. The economic challenges of maintaining multiple royal courts simultaneously strained traditional systems of taxation and resource allocation that had been designed to support a single central government. Regional rulers needed to develop alternative approaches to generating revenues while providing the magnificent displays that validated their claims to divine authority. Local rulers began emphasizing direct relationships with their subjects, rather than relying solely on the distant mystique that had characterized Old Kingdom pharaohs. They appeared more frequently at public ceremonies, participated personally in religious festivals, and involved themselves directly in resolving disputes and addressing community needs. This accessibility created stronger bonds between rulers and subjects, while maintaining the essential dignity required for divine kingship. Trade relationships during the first intermediate period reflected the fragmented nature of political authority as different regions developed independent commercial networks suited to their particular resources and strategic positions. Northern territories maintained traditional connections with Mediterranean partners, while southern regions expanded relationships with Nubian kingdoms and African trading networks. These diverse commercial relationships brought new influences into Egyptian culture that would enrich pharaonic civilization, even as political unity remained elusive. Foreign artistic styles, religious concepts, and technological innovations entered Egypt through multiple channels, creating cultural diversity that enhanced rather than threatened traditional Egyptian identity. The architectural achievements of First Intermediate Period rulers, while less monumentally scaled than Old Kingdom pyramids, demonstrated continued commitment to expressing divine authority through permanent construction projects. Regional rulers built temples, tombs, and administrative complexes that reflected their cosmic responsibilities while adapting to reduced resources and local materials. These smaller-scale projects often showed greater attention to artistic detail and innovative design elements than their massive predecessors. Freed from the constraints of established architectural traditions, regional builders experimented with new approaches to sacred space that would influence later pharaonic construction projects throughout Egyptian history. The literary achievements of this period reveal sophisticated attempts to preserve and transmit pharaonic ideology despite political fragmentation. Scribes throughout the kingdom continued composing royal inscriptions, religious texts, and administrative documents that maintained traditional forms while adapting their content to contemporary circumstances. These writings demonstrate the intellectual vitality that persisted throughout the First Intermediate Period, as scholars worked to understand and explain the challenges facing pharaonic civilization. Their efforts to reconcile traditional beliefs with contemporary realities created new frameworks for understanding divine kingship that would prove essential for its eventual restoration. The coffin texts, religious inscriptions found in private tombs from this period, reveal how pharaonic religious concepts had spread beyond the royal family to influence broader segments of Egyptian society. These texts adapted traditional pharaonic afterlife beliefs for use by non-royal individuals, demonstrating the profound cultural impact of divine kingship, even during periods of political weakness. The democratization of pharaonic religious concepts during the First Intermediate Period created broader popular support for divine kingship as an institution, while reducing its exclusivity as a royal prerogative. This development would prove crucial for the eventual restoration of unified pharaonic authority under rulers who could appeal to popular understanding of divine principles. Regional art styles that emerged during this period reflected local interpretations of traditional pharaonic symbolism adapted to contemporary circumstances and available materials. These artistic innovations demonstrated the creative vitality that persisted throughout Egyptian society despite political challenges and economic constraints. The preservation of pharaonic artistic traditions through local workshops ensured continuity of symbolic knowledge that would be essential for the eventual restoration of unified divine kingship. Master craftsmen passed traditional techniques and symbolic meanings to new generations of artists who would eventually serve reunified pharaonic governments. As we drift through these centuries of challenge and adaptation, we witness the remarkable resilience of divine kingship as it weathered storms that would have destroyed less deeply rooted institutions. The pharaonic concept proved flexible enough to adapt to unprecedented circumstances while maintaining its essential character and popular appeal. The competing rulers of the First Intermediate Period, despite their political conflicts, all shared commitment to the fundamental principles of divine kingship that had sustained Egyptian civilization for nearly a millennium. Their struggles represented not rejection of pharaonic authority, but competition to embody it most authentically and effectively. Around 2055 BCE, these centuries of division and testing would culminate in the remarkable restoration achieved by Mentuhotep II of Thebes, whose reunification of Egypt marked the beginning of the Middle Kingdom and demonstrated the enduring power of pharaonic ideology to inspire unity and renewal. His success would prove that divine kingship, properly understood and skillfully implemented, remained the most effective system for governing Egyptian civilization. The triumph of Mentuhotep. The second represented more than military victory over northern rivals. It marked the vindication of pharaonic principles that had survived their greatest test and emerged, strengthened by the experience. His reign would establish precedents for royal authority that balanced traditional divine prerogatives with the practical lessons learned during the period of division. The reunification process required extraordinary diplomatic skill, as Mentuhotep II worked to reconcile competing factions while establishing his authority as the sole legitimate pharaoh. His success depended upon demonstrating both military superiority and spiritual authenticity to audiences who had grown accustomed to evaluating competing claims to divine authority. The coronation ceremonies that marked Mentuhotep II's achievement of unified rule incorporated elements from both northern and southern traditions, while introducing innovations that reflected lessons learned during the first intermediate period. These rituals emphasized popular participation alongside priestly validation, creating broader foundations for pharaonic authority. The administrative systems established by the reunified kingdom balanced central royal authority with regional autonomy in ways that prevented the excessive concentration of power that had contributed to the Old Kingdom's collapse. Provincial governors retained significant local authority while remaining clearly subordinate to pharaonic oversight and direction. Military reforms implemented during Mentuhotep II's reign created professional forces capable of maintaining internal unity while defending Egypt against foreign threats that had exploited the kingdom's previous weakness. These innovations established patterns of military organization that would characterize pharaonic armies throughout the Middle Kingdom period. The economic policies of the reunified kingdom emphasized sustainable prosperity rather than the monumental expenditures that had strained Old Kingdom resources. Royal construction projects were carefully planned to provide employment and demonstrate pharaonic power without exhausting the agricultural surplus that sustained Egyptian civilization. Religious reforms during this period strengthened the theological foundations of divine kingship while incorporating regional variations that had emerged during the first intermediate period. The pharaoh's cosmic authority was reaffirmed while acknowledging the spiritual insights that had developed in different parts of the kingdom during the centuries of division. The cultural renaissance that accompanied political reunification demonstrated the creative potential that had been constrained by political fragmentation. Royal patronage supported artists, writers, and scholars whose works celebrated the restoration of pharaonic unity while exploring new expressions of traditional themes. As Mentuhotep II's reign established the foundations for Middle Kingdom prosperity, the lessons learned from the first intermediate period created a more mature understanding of divine kingship that balanced cosmic authority with practical governance. The pharaohs who would follow would inherit not only restored political unity, but also deeper wisdom about the responsibilities and limitations of divine rule. In the gentle currents of our midnight journey, these voices from Egypt's age of testing whisper their hard-won wisdom about resilience, adaptation, and the enduring power of sacred principles to survive even the most challenging circumstances. Their experiences remind us that true strength lies not in avoiding difficulties, but in learning from them while maintaining faith in fundamental truths that transcend temporary setbacks. Let these ancient lessons guide your thoughts toward peaceful rest as we prepare to explore the golden age of the Middle Kingdom, when pharaonic authority would achieve new heights of sophistication and effectiveness through the integration of traditional wisdom with innovative approaches to divine governance. The god-kings who would emerge from this crucible of challenge would prove worthy heirs to the eternal legacy of pharaonic divinity. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs, beginning with the 11th dynasty's triumph, would demonstrate that divine kingship could evolve and strengthen through adversity while maintaining its essential character as the cosmic foundation of Egyptian civilization. Their achievements would inspire generations of successors while providing timeless examples of how sacred authority could adapt to changing circumstances without compromising its fundamental principles. The Middle Kingdom pharaohs understood that divine authority required more than magnificent ceremonies and monumental architecture. It demanded genuine wisdom in balancing competing interests while maintaining the cosmic order that sustained Egyptian civilization. Pharaoh Amenemhat I, who established the 12th dynasty around 1991 BCE, embodied this sophisticated approach to divine kingship through innovative policies that strengthened royal authority while addressing the regional concerns that had contributed to the First Intermediate Period's fragmentation. Amenemhat I's approach to governance reflected profound understanding of the lessons learned during the centuries of division. Rather than attempting to restore the absolute centralization that had characterized Old Kingdom administration, he developed systems that preserved essential royal prerogatives while accommodating legitimate regional interests and local traditions that had taken root during the period of political fragmentation. The capital he established at Itj-Tawi, strategically located between Upper and Lower Egypt, symbolized his commitment to unifying the kingdom through balanced representation rather than northern or southern dominance. This new royal city was designed not merely as an administrative center, but as a sacred space where divine authority could be exercised in ways that acknowledged the diverse constituencies that comprised the reunified kingdom. The architecture of Itj-Tawi incorporated design elements from both traditional pharaonic monuments and regional styles that had emerged during the First Intermediate Period. Palace complexes combined the grandeur necessary for divine kingship with accessibility features that enabled more direct interaction between the pharaoh and his subjects. Throne rooms were designed to accommodate larger audiences while maintaining the ceremonial dignity required for royal appearances. Royal workshops established in the new capital brought together master craftsmen from throughout the kingdom, creating collaborative environments where traditional techniques were refined through exposure to regional innovations. These artistic collaborations produced distinctive Middle Kingdom styles that celebrated pharaonic divinity while incorporating decorative elements that reflected the cultural diversity of the reunified realm. The administrative systems implemented by Amenemhat I demonstrated remarkable sophistication in balancing centralized oversight with regional autonomy. Provincial governors retained significant authority over local affairs, while being required to participate in expanded royal councils that ensured coordination between different parts of the kingdom. These councils served both practical administrative functions and symbolic purposes, reinforcing the unity of the realm under pharaonic authority. Royal appointments during this period emphasized competence and loyalty over hereditary claims, reflecting lessons learned about the dangers of allowing provincial positions to become independent power centers. However, Amenemhat I was careful to reward existing regional leaders who demonstrated commitment to unified governance rather than simply replacing them with royal appointees who lacked local knowledge and support. The military reforms implemented during the early Middle Kingdom created professional forces that could maintain internal stability while defending against foreign threats that had exploited Egypt's previous weakness. These armies combined traditional Egyptian tactics with innovations learned from foreign opponents during the First Intermediate Period, creating more versatile and effective fighting forces. Military service during this period became a pathway for social advancement that enabled talented individuals from modest backgrounds to achieve positions of responsibility and respect within pharaonic government. This meritocratic approach to military promotion created bonds of personal loyalty between the pharaoh and his officers, while ensuring that defensive capabilities were based on competence rather than social status alone. The economic policies of Amenemhat I's reign emphasized sustainable development that could support royal magnificence without exhausting the agricultural and commercial resources that sustained Egyptian civilization. Construction projects were planned to provide employment, during periods when agricultural work was seasonal, while creating permanent improvements to irrigation systems, transportation networks, and urban infrastructure. Trade relationships during the early Middle Kingdom expanded beyond traditional patterns to include new partnerships with kingdoms in Nubia, the Levant, and the Eastern Mediterranean. These commercial networks brought exotic goods and foreign technologies to Egypt while extending pharaonic influence through peaceful economic relationships rather than military conquest alone. The cultural flowering that accompanied political and economic renewal demonstrated the creative potential that had been constrained during the centuries of division. Royal patronage supported poets, storytellers, and scholars whose works explored themes of unity, renewal, and the proper relationship between divine rulers and their subjects. These literary achievements created new expressions of pharaonic ideology that would influence Egyptian thought for centuries to come. The tale of Sinuhe, perhaps the masterpiece of Middle Kingdom literature, explores the complex emotions of exile and return while celebrating the magnetic power of pharaonic authority to draw devoted subjects back to their homeland. This story reveals sophisticated understanding of the psychological dimensions of royal loyalty that went beyond simple political obligation to encompass genuine emotional attachment to the divine king and his realm. Religious developments during Amenemhat I's reign strengthened the theological foundations of pharaonic authority while incorporating spiritual insights that had emerged during the First Intermediate Period. The pharaoh's divine nature was reaffirmed through elaborate ceremonies that demonstrated his cosmic responsibilities while acknowledging the religious experiences of regional communities that had developed independent relationships with various deities. Temple construction during this period reflected the pharaoh's role as patron of all Egyptian religious traditions, rather than just the royal cult that had dominated Old Kingdom priorities. New sanctuaries honored local deities while maintaining clear acknowledgement of pharaonic authority over all spiritual matters within the kingdom. These religious policies created broader popular support for divine kingship while preserving its exclusive cosmic character. The succession arrangements established by Amenemhat I revealed deep concern about preserving stable royal authority for future generations, while avoiding the succession crises that had contributed to the Old Kingdom's collapse. His decision to associate his son Senusret I as co-ruler during his own lifetime created precedents for managed transitions that would characterize Middle Kingdom dynastic practices. This co-rulership system enabled experienced pharaohs to train their successors in the complex responsibilities of divine kingship, while ensuring continuity of policies and relationships that were essential for governmental stability. The younger co-ruler participated in major decisions and ceremonial functions, while gradually assuming greater responsibilities under careful supervision from the senior pharaoh. The assassination of Amenemhat I in 1962 BCE, despite these careful succession preparations, demonstrated that even the most sophisticated divine kingship remained vulnerable to political violence from individuals who rejected the cosmic order that pharaonic authority represented. However, the smooth transition to sole rule by Senusret I proved that the institutional foundations of Middle Kingdom governance were strong enough to survive such challenges. Senusret I's response to his father's murder revealed the mature understanding of royal responsibility that characterized Middle Kingdom pharaohs. Rather than launching indiscriminate purges or retreating into defensive isolation, he used the crisis as an opportunity to strengthen the bonds between the royal family and loyal subjects, while demonstrating that divine authority could not be destroyed through violence against individual rulers. The military campaigns that Senusret I conducted during the early years of his sole reign served multiple purposes beyond simple territorial expansion. These expeditions demonstrated pharaonic power to potential enemies, while providing opportunities for loyal subjects to gain wealth and honor through service to their divine king. The successful outcomes reinforced popular confidence in royal authority, while deterring future assassination attempts. The architectural achievements of Senusret I's reign reflected both continuity with his father's policies and innovations that expressed his personal vision of pharaonic authority. His pyramid complex at Lisht incorporated traditional design elements while introducing refinements that demonstrated the continuing evolution of royal tomb architecture. The surrounding structures created elaborate ceremonial spaces for rituals that celebrated the pharaoh's eternal nature. The White Chapel, constructed at Karnak during Senusret, the first reign, exemplified the sophisticated artistic achievements of Middle Kingdom royal workshops. This limestone structure combined architectural elegance with religious symbolism in ways that demonstrated the pharaoh's role as mediator between divine and human realms. Every surface was decorated with scenes depicting royal religious ceremonies and divine endorsements of pharaonic authority. The hieroglyphic inscriptions that covered these monuments revealed the literary sophistication that characterized Middle Kingdom royal compositions. These texts combined traditional religious formulas with innovative expressions of pharaonic ideology that reflected contemporary understanding of divine kingship. The language itself became more nuanced and expressive, enabling more complex theological and political concepts to be preserved in permanent form. Provincial monuments commissioned during Senusret I's reign demonstrated the successful balance between central authority and regional recognition that characterized Middle Kingdom governance. Local governors were encouraged to construct tombs and temples that celebrated their service to the pharaoh, while acknowledging their subordinate status within the cosmic hierarchy that placed divine kingship at its apex. The artistic styles that emerged in these provincial monuments revealed creative synthesis between traditional royal iconography and regional artistic traditions. Local craftsmen adapted pharaonic symbols to express their particular cultural perspectives while maintaining clear acknowledgement of royal authority. This artistic diversity enriched Egyptian visual culture while reinforcing political unity under divine kingship. The expansion of Egyptian influence into Nubia during Senusret, the first reign, demonstrated the military and diplomatic capabilities that enabled Middle Kingdom pharaohs to project power beyond Egypt's traditional borders. These southern campaigns secured access to gold deposits and exotic materials, while establishing Egyptian administrative presence in territories that would remain under pharaonic control for centuries. The fortresses constructed along the Nubian frontier during this period revealed sophisticated understanding of military engineering and strategic planning that enabled relatively small Egyptian garrisons to control vast territories. These installations served not only defensive purposes, but also as centers for trade and cultural exchange that extended Egyptian influence through peaceful as well as military means. The relationship between pharaonic authority and Nubian populations during the Middle Kingdom demonstrated the adaptive nature of Egyptian imperial policies. Rather than attempting to impose complete cultural assimilation, Egyptian administrators worked to identify and collaborate with local leaders who could serve as intermediaries between pharaonic government and indigenous communities. This pragmatic approach to imperial governance enabled Egypt to extract valuable resources from Nubian territories while maintaining political stability through arrangements that acknowledged local customs and leadership structures. The success of these policies created models for pharaonic administration that would influence Egyptian imperial practices throughout subsequent periods. The reign of Amenemhat II, beginning around 1929 BCE, continued the policies of balanced governance and careful expansion that had characterized the early Middle Kingdom, while introducing refinements that reflected growing confidence in the stability and effectiveness of restored pharaonic authority. His reign marked the full maturation of Middle Kingdom governmental systems that successfully integrated traditional divine kingship with practical administrative innovations. The diplomatic relationships that Amenemhat II established with foreign kingdoms demonstrated the international prestige that successful pharaonic governance had restored to Egypt. These diplomatic contacts brought exotic gifts and valuable intelligence to the Egyptian court, while extending pharaonic influence through peaceful means that complemented military capabilities. Royal correspondence from this period reveals the sophisticated protocols that governed international relations during the Middle Kingdom. Letters exchanged between pharaohs and foreign rulers followed elaborate formulaic structures that acknowledged the cosmic superiority of Egyptian divine kingship while maintaining diplomatic courtesy necessary for effective international cooperation. The economic prosperity that characterized Amenemhat II's reign enabled ambitious construction projects that demonstrated pharaonic power while providing practical benefits for Egyptian society. Irrigation improvements expanded agricultural production. Urban development projects enhanced living conditions, and transportation infrastructure facilitated trade and communication throughout the kingdom. These public works projects served important social functions beyond their immediate practical purposes. They provided employment opportunities during seasonal periods when agricultural work was reduced, created training programs that developed skilled craftsmen, and demonstrated the pharaoh's commitment to improving his subjects' welfare through practical applications of divine authority. The artistic achievements supported by royal patronage during this period reflected the cultural confidence that accompanied political and economic success. Sculptors, painters, and decorative artists developed distinctive Middle Kingdom styles that celebrated pharaonic divinity while exploring themes of renewal, prosperity, and cosmic harmony that resonated with contemporary experiences. The portrait sculptures of Middle Kingdom pharaohs revealed evolving concepts about the relationship between divine authority and human personality. These works combined idealized representations of cosmic kingship with realistic details that acknowledged the individual characteristics of specific rulers. The resulting artistic synthesis created more psychologically complex images of pharaonic authority than had characterized earlier periods. The literary works commissioned during Amenemhat II's reign explored sophisticated themes about the nature of royal responsibility and the proper relationship between pharaohs and their subjects. These compositions combined entertainment value with didactic purposes, creating engaging narratives that transmitted important cultural values while celebrating the achievements of divine kingship. The instructions of Amenemhat, attributed to the founder of the 12th dynasty, exemplified the wisdom literature that flourished during the Middle Kingdom. This text combined practical advice about governance with philosophical reflections on the nature of royal authority and the cosmic responsibilities that divine kingship entailed. Such works created intellectual frameworks that supported pharaonic ideology while encouraging critical thinking about leadership and justice. The religious innovations of the Middle Kingdom period demonstrated the continuing evolution of pharaonic theology in response to changing social and political circumstances. New interpretations of traditional myths acknowledged the spiritual insights that had emerged during the First Intermediate period, while reaffirming the essential cosmic role of divine kingship in maintaining universal order. The democratization of afterlife beliefs that had begun during the First Intermediate period continued under Middle Kingdom pharaohs, who recognized that broader popular participation in religious practices strengthened rather than threatened royal authority. Ordinary Egyptians gained access to religious texts and burial practices that had previously been restricted to royal families, creating deeper popular investment in the cosmic order that pharaonic authority represented. This expansion of religious participation required careful management to preserve the exclusive aspects of pharaonic divinity, while acknowledging the legitimate spiritual aspirations of non-royal subjects. Middle Kingdom priests developed sophisticated theological frameworks that distinguished between general human spiritual potential and the unique cosmic responsibilities that belonged exclusively to divine kings. The festival celebrations that characterized Middle Kingdom religious life provided opportunities for direct interaction between pharaohs and their subjects, while reinforcing hierarchical relationships that maintained cosmic order. These public ceremonies combined magnificent displays of royal authority with popular participation that strengthened emotional bonds between divine rulers and devoted followers. The said festival, traditionally celebrated after 30 years of pharaonic rule, became particularly important during the Middle Kingdom as a demonstration of divine renewal that validated continued royal authority. These elaborate celebrations required months of preparation and involved participants from throughout the kingdom in ceremonies that symbolically renewed the pharaoh's cosmic energy while reaffirming popular loyalty to divine kingship. As we drift deeper into the Middle Kingdom's golden age, the whispers of these accomplished pharaohs grow richer with hard-won wisdom about the delicate balance between cosmic authority and earthly responsibility. Their voices carry the confidence of rulers who had successfully restored divine kingship while learning from the challenges that had tested their predecessors, creating governmental systems that would sustain Egyptian civilization through centuries of prosperity and cultural achievement. The pharaohs of the 12th dynasty's later period would continue refining these innovations while facing new challenges that would test the adaptability and resilience of divine kingship in ways that would prepare Egyptian royal institutions for the trials that lay ahead. Their achievements stand as monuments to human wisdom guided by divine inspiration, creating legacies that continue to inspire awe and wonder more than 4,000 years after their earthly reigns concluded. In the gentle embrace of these ancient voices, we find comfort in their eternal presence, their stories weaving through our dreams like golden threads connecting past and present in the timeless tapestry of human aspiration toward divine truth. Let their whispered wisdom guide you toward peaceful rest as we continue our journey through the sacred mysteries of pharaonic Egypt, where mortal ambition and cosmic responsibility dance together in perfect harmony along the eternal banks of the sacred Nile. The reign of Senusret III, beginning around 1878 BCE, would mark the pinnacle of Middle Kingdom pharaonic power and reveal the full potential of divine kingship when guided by exceptional wisdom and unwavering dedication to cosmic responsibility. This remarkable pharaoh embodied everything that centuries of royal evolution had been building toward, combining traditional divine authority with innovative approaches to governance that would establish new standards for pharaonic excellence. From the moment of his coronation, Senusret III demonstrated understanding that true divine kingship required more than ceremonial magnificence or inherited authority. His early reforms targeted the persistent challenge of provincial power that had threatened royal unity since the First Intermediate Period. But his solutions revealed sophisticated political intelligence that transformed potential weaknesses into sources of strength. Rather than simply suppressing regional governors who had accumulated hereditary influence, Senusret III restructured the entire administrative system to create new forms of service that channeled ambitious energies towards supporting, rather than competing with, pharaonic authority. Provincial positions were transformed from hereditary sinecures into merit-based appointments that required demonstrated competence and unwavering loyalty to divine kingship. The bureaucratic innovations that emerged during his reign created career pathways that enabled talented individuals from diverse backgrounds to achieve positions of responsibility and influence within royal government. These opportunities for advancement based on ability rather than birth created new constituencies of supporters whose personal success depended entirely on the continuation of pharaonic systems that had enabled their rise. Military campaigns conducted under Senusret III's personal leadership revealed dimensions of pharaonic authority that had been dormant since the Old Kingdom's greatest conquerors. His expeditions into Nubia weren't merely territorial acquisitions, but carefully planned demonstrations of divine power that established Egyptian dominance over vast regions while providing practical training for professional armies that would defend the kingdom for generations. The fortification systems constructed during these southern campaigns represented masterpieces of military engineering that combined defensive effectiveness with symbolic statements about the permanence of pharaonic authority. These massive stone strongholds, positioned at strategic points along the Nile, created an integrated network of Egyptian control that extended pharaonic influence hundreds of miles beyond the traditional boundaries of the kingdom. The inscriptions carved into these fortress walls revealed Senusret III's personal involvement in every aspect of military planning and construction oversight. His detailed knowledge of engineering principles, tactical considerations, and logistical requirements demonstrated the comprehensive education that prepared Middle Kingdom pharaohs for their cosmic responsibilities. These weren't distant commanders issuing abstract orders, but hands-on leaders who understood every detail of their operations. The psychological impact of Senusret III's military successes extended far beyond the immediate territories that came under Egyptian control. Reports of pharaonic victories spread throughout the ancient world, establishing Egypt's reputation as the dominant military power while deterring potential enemies who might otherwise have tested Egyptian resolve. This strategic reputation became a defensive asset that protected Egyptian interests through fear as much as actual force. The economic benefits generated through military expansion enabled Senusret III to undertake construction projects that surpassed even the architectural achievements of his accomplished predecessors. His pyramid complex at Dashur incorporated innovative design elements that reflected evolving concepts about pharaonic divinity, while demonstrating the technical capabilities that divine authority could command. The underground chambers of this pyramid revealed sophisticated understanding of both engineering principles and religious symbolism that could only have emerged from the pharaoh's unique position as mediator between earthly and cosmic realms. Complex passages and hidden chambers created sacred spaces for rituals that would ensure the pharaoh's successful transformation from living god to eternal deity. The artistic achievements sponsored during Senusret III's reign established new standards for royal portraiture that would influence Egyptian sculpture for centuries to come. His portrait statues revealed psychological depth and individual character that transcended traditional idealized representations of pharaonic authority, creating more human and accessible images of divine kingship without compromising its cosmic dignity. These sculptural innovations reflected the pharaoh's understanding that effective divine authority required genuine connection with subjects who needed to see their god-king as both supremely powerful and genuinely concerned about their welfare. The portraits showed strength tempered by wisdom, authority balanced by compassion, and divine nature expressed through recognizably human features that invited devotion rather than merely demanding submission. The administrative reforms that Senusret III implemented during the middle years of his reign created governmental systems that would survive virtually unchanged for centuries, demonstrating institutional innovation of the highest order. His division of Egypt into administrative departments overseen by royal appointees eliminated the regional power centers that had repeatedly threatened pharaonic unity, while ensuring effective local governance through qualified professionals. These new administrative structures combined centralized oversight with local responsiveness in ways that maximized both efficiency and popular satisfaction. Citizens could access royal justice through local representatives, while knowing that their concerns would receive attention from officials who answered directly to divine authority. The system created unprecedented levels of governmental accountability, while maintaining appropriate respect for pharaonic dignity. The legal reforms accompanying these administrative changes established comprehensive law codes that standardized procedures throughout the kingdom while preserving regional customs that didn't conflict with royal authority. These legal innovations created more predictable and fair judicial processes that enhanced popular confidence in pharaonic justice, while providing clear guidelines for officials who administered royal authority in distant provinces. Royal courts established during this period became models of judicial excellence that combined rigorous attention to evidence with compassionate consideration of individual circumstances. Judges appointed by the pharaoh were required to demonstrate both legal knowledge and moral character that would enable them to serve as worthy representatives of divine justice in their communities. The international relationships that Senusret III cultivated during his reign elevated Egypt to unprecedented levels of diplomatic prestige and commercial advantage. His correspondence with foreign rulers revealed sophisticated understanding of international politics that enabled Egypt to achieve strategic objectives through negotiation, as well as military pressure when necessary. Trade agreements negotiated during this period brought exotic goods and valuable resources to Egypt, while extending pharaonic influence throughout the ancient world. These commercial relationships created networks of mutual interest that strengthened Egyptian security, while demonstrating the practical benefits of maintaining peaceful relations with divine kingship. The cultural flowering that accompanied political and economic success during Senusret. The Third's reign produced literary and artistic achievements that would be remembered as classics of Egyptian civilization. Royal patronage supported poets, historians, and scholars whose works celebrated pharaonic accomplishments, while exploring universal themes about leadership, justice, and the proper relationship between rulers and subjects. The educational institutions that emerged during this period created systematic approaches to training the administrators, priests, and specialists who were essential for effective pharaonic government. These schools combined practical instruction in reading, writing, and mathematics with philosophical education about the cosmic principles that govern divine kingship and justified royal authority. Students who completed these educational programs formed an intellectual elite that shared common understanding of pharaonic ideology and governmental procedures. This educational standardization created greater consistency in administrative practices, while ensuring that royal policies were implemented by officials who genuinely understood and supported the principles underlying divine kingship. The religious developments that occurred during Senusret III's reign strengthened the theological foundations of pharaonic authority, while accommodating popular spiritual needs that had emerged during the centuries since the Old Kingdom's collapse. New interpretations of traditional myths emphasized the pharaoh's role as protector and provider, rather than distant cosmic force, creating more accessible concepts of divine kingship. Temple construction during this period reflected the pharaoh's commitment to honoring all Egyptian deities, while maintaining clear acknowledgement of royal authority over religious matters. New sanctuaries combined architectural magnificence with practical functionality that enabled more elaborate ceremonies and larger congregations to participate in religious observances. The priestly training programs established during Senusret III's reign created more educated and disciplined religious professionals who could effectively support pharaonic authority while meeting the spiritual needs of local communities. These priests underwent rigorous education in theology, ritual procedures, and administrative skills that enabled them to serve as effective representatives of divine kingship in religious contexts. The festival celebrations that characterized religious life during this period provided opportunities for magnificent displays of royal authority combined with popular participation that strengthened emotional bonds between the pharaoh and his subjects. These ceremonies required months of preparation and involved craftsmen, musicians, and performers from throughout the kingdom in collaborative efforts that celebrated pharaonic divinity. The agricultural innovations that Senusret III promoted during his reign increased food production, while reducing the labor required for farming, freeing human resources for construction projects and military service that advanced royal objectives. New irrigation techniques and crop varieties enhanced the prosperity that sustained pharaonic magnificence while improving living conditions for ordinary Egyptians. The transportation improvements completed during this period facilitated trade and communication throughout the kingdom, while demonstrating pharaonic commitment to practical projects that benefited all subjects. New roads, bridges, and canal systems reduced travel times and shipping costs, while creating employment opportunities for craftsmen and laborers who gained skills through royal service. Urban development projects in major cities created more comfortable and attractive living environments, while providing settings for the ceremonies and administrative functions that were essential for effective pharaonic government. Palace complexes combined residential comfort with ceremonial grandeur that enabled the pharaoh to maintain appropriate dignity while remaining accessible to subjects who required royal attention. The technological innovations that emerged during Senusret III's reign reflected the creative potential that flourished under royal patronage, combined with practical necessity. New tools, weapons, and construction techniques enhanced Egyptian capabilities, while demonstrating the benefits of divine authority that could mobilize and direct human intelligence toward productive purposes. Medical advances during this period created more effective treatments for diseases and injuries that had previously caused unnecessary suffering and death. Royal physicians developed new surgical procedures and pharmaceutical preparations, while establishing medical schools that trained practitioners who could serve communities throughout the kingdom. The mathematical and astronomical achievements of Middle Kingdom scholars during this period enhanced Egyptian understanding of natural phenomena, while providing practical tools for agricultural planning, architectural design, and navigation that supported pharaonic policies. These intellectual advances were seen as divine wisdom channeled through royal authority rather than secular learning independent of cosmic guidance. The literary masterpieces composed during Senusret III's reign explored themes of heroism, loyalty, and divine justice that celebrated pharaonic achievements while providing entertainment and moral instruction for audiences throughout Egyptian society. These works combined artistic excellence with didactic purposes that strengthened popular support for divine kingship. The legacy of Senusret III's reign extended far beyond his immediate accomplishments to establish precedents and create institutions that would influence Egyptian civilization for centuries to come. His innovations in government, military organization, and cultural development provided foundations that would enable his successors to maintain pharaonic authority through changing circumstances and new challenges. The succession arrangements that he established ensured smooth transition to his heir, while preserving the governmental systems and policy approaches that had produced such remarkable success. His son, Amenemhat III, inherited not only traditional pharaonic authority, but also refined institutions and experienced administrators who could continue the work of divine kingship without disruption. The reign of Amenemhat III, beginning around 1860 BCE, would demonstrate the maturity and stability that Middle Kingdom pharaonic systems had achieved under his father's guidance. His long and prosperous reign would mark the culmination of centuries of royal evolution, creating the most successful expression of divine kingship that Egyptian civilization would ever achieve. The architectural projects that Amenemhat III undertook during his reign reflected both continuity with established traditions and innovations that expressed his personal vision of pharaonic authority. His pyramid complexes at Dashur and Hawara incorporated design elements that demonstrated continuing evolution in royal tomb architecture while maintaining traditional symbolic functions. The Labyrinth, a vast temple complex associated with Amenemhat III's Hawara pyramid, was described by ancient visitors as one of the wonders of the world, surpassing even the Great Pyramid in its complexity and magnificence. This structure combined religious, administrative, and ceremonial functions in ways that demonstrated the comprehensive nature of pharaonic authority over all aspects of Egyptian life. The agricultural policies that Amenemhat III implemented during his reign achieved unprecedented levels of productivity and efficiency that sustained the largest population in Egyptian history while generating surpluses that supported magnificent royal projects. His development of the Fayum region created new agricultural territories that enhanced Egyptian food security, while demonstrating pharaonic power to transform natural environments. The irrigation systems constructed during this period represented engineering achievements that rivaled the pyramids in their technical sophistication and practical importance. These hydraulic projects required precise mathematical calculations and coordinated labor efforts that demonstrated the continuing ability of divine kingship to mobilize human resources for beneficial purposes. The international relationships that Amenemhat III maintained during his reign established Egypt as the acknowledged leader of the ancient world, while creating commercial and diplomatic networks that brought prosperity and cultural enrichment to the kingdom. Foreign rulers sought Egyptian alliance and approval, while Egyptian merchants and diplomats carried pharaonic influence throughout the known world. The cultural achievements, supported by royal patronage during this period, created lasting masterpieces that would inspire artists and writers for millennia to come. The sophistication of Middle Kingdom literature, sculpture, and architecture reflected the intellectual vitality that flourished under stable and effective pharaonic government. The administrative efficiency that characterized Amenemhat III's reign created governmental systems that functioned with unprecedented smoothness and effectiveness. His bureaucratic innovations balanced central oversight with local responsiveness, while maintaining the personal connections between pharaoh and subjects that were essential for legitimate authority. The legal systems that operated during this period provided fair and predictable justice that enhanced popular confidence in pharaonic authority while protecting individual rights and promoting social harmony. Royal courts throughout the kingdom administered law with consistency and competence that demonstrated the practical benefits of divine kingship for ordinary Egyptians. The military forces that Amenemhat III maintained during his reign ensured Egyptian security while projecting pharaonic power throughout the ancient world. These professional armies combined traditional Egyptian strengths with tactical innovations that kept Egypt ahead of potential enemies, while providing opportunities for advancement based on merit and loyalty. The economic prosperity that characterized the later Middle Kingdom created living standards that would not be equaled again until modern times. Egyptian society achieved levels of wealth, security, and cultural sophistication that demonstrated the potential of human civilization guided by wise and effective divine authority. The religious developments that occurred during Amenemhat III's reign strengthened popular devotion to pharaonic authority while accommodating diverse spiritual needs throughout the kingdom. Temple construction and religious innovations created more accessible and meaningful religious experiences while maintaining clear acknowledgement of royal supremacy in spiritual matters. The educational institutions that flourished during this period created more literate and knowledgeable populations while training the specialists who were essential for effective pharaonic government. These schools combined practical instruction with moral education that strengthened social cohesion while preparing individuals for productive service to divine kingship. As Amenemhat III's long and successful reign drew toward its close around 1814 BCE, the Middle Kingdom had achieved the highest expression of pharaonic civilization that would ever be attained. His accomplishments represented the culmination of centuries of royal evolution and institutional development that had created the most effective and beneficial form of divine government in human history. The transition to his successor would mark the beginning of gradual changes that would eventually challenge the stability and effectiveness that had characterized Middle Kingdom pharaonic authority. But the achievements of the 12th dynasty had established standards of excellence and created institutional precedents that would influence Egyptian civilization for thousands of years to come. In the gentle darkness of our shared journey, the voices of these accomplished pharaohs whisper their timeless wisdom about the possibilities and responsibilities of divine authority, guided by genuine concern for human welfare. Their achievements remind us that power combined with wisdom and compassion can create wonders that inspire awe and devotion across the centuries. Let these royal voices guide your thoughts toward peaceful rest as we prepare to explore the challenges that would test the resilience of pharaonic institutions during the Second Intermediate Period, when foreign invasion and internal division would again test the adaptability of divine kingship in ways that would reshape Egyptian civilization for centuries to come. The pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom had proven that divine authority could evolve and strengthen through experience while maintaining its essential character as the cosmic foundation of human civilization. Their legacies would endure through all the trials that lay ahead, providing inspiration and guidance for future generations who would work to restore pharaonic greatness in their own times. The gradual decline of the Middle Kingdom's pharaonic splendor began almost imperceptibly during the final years of the 13th dynasty, as the institutional foundations that had sustained divine kingship for nearly 4 centuries began showing subtle signs of strain beneath the weight of their own success. The very prosperity that had marked pharaonic achievement created new challenges that would test the adaptability of royal authority in ways that earlier pharaohs could never have anticipated. The succession patterns that had provided stability during the 12th dynasty's golden age became increasingly complex as competing branches of the royal family advanced rival claims to divine authority. Unlike the carefully managed transitions that had characterized earlier periods, the later Middle Kingdom witnessed more frequent changes of ruler, as pharaohs died without clear heirs or faced challenges from ambitious relatives who questioned the legitimacy of established succession arrangements. These royal disputes, while initially contained within palace circles, gradually undermined the aura of cosmic certainty that had surrounded pharaonic authority since the reunification under Mentuhotep II. Court observers began questioning whether the gods had withdrawn their clear guidance about divine succession, creating theological uncertainties that weakened popular confidence in royal decision-making processes. The administrative systems that had functioned with remarkable efficiency under strong pharaonic leadership began experiencing coordination difficulties as royal authority became less decisive and consistent. Provincial governors, accustomed to clear directives from confident divine kings, found themselves receiving contradictory instructions or facing extended delays in obtaining royal responses to urgent local problems. Regional administrators who had prospered under the merit-based appointment systems of the 12th dynasty began developing more independent approaches to governance, as royal oversight became less reliable and consistent. These officials maintained formal loyalty to pharaonic authority, while gradually assuming greater responsibility for decisions that had previously required explicit royal approval. The military forces that had projected pharaonic power throughout the ancient world during the Middle Kingdom's height began experiencing resource constraints as royal treasuries faced increasing demands from competing priorities. Maintaining professional armies, while supporting construction projects and administrative expansion, created financial pressures that forced difficult choices about resource allocation. Garrison commanders along the Nubian frontier reported growing difficulties in maintaining their fortifications and equipment without regular supplies and reinforcements from royal workshops in the Nile Valley. These logistical challenges didn't immediately threaten Egyptian control over southern territories, but they created vulnerabilities that observant enemies would eventually recognize and exploit. The diplomatic relationships that had established Egypt as the dominant power in ancient international affairs began shifting as foreign rulers perceived changes in pharaonic capabilities and commitment to maintaining established spheres of influence. Trade agreements that had operated smoothly for generations required more frequent renegotiation as partners questioned Egypt's ability to maintain the commercial stability that had made these relationships mutually beneficial. The cultural confidence that had produced the Middle Kingdom's greatest literary and artistic achievements began reflecting themes of uncertainty and nostalgia that suggested growing awareness of challenges facing pharaonic civilization. Royal poets and scribes increasingly celebrated the accomplishments of earlier pharaohs, while expressing concern about maintaining those standards in contemporary circumstances. The religious developments of the later Middle Kingdom revealed growing theological complexity as priests throughout the kingdom grappled with questions about divine authority that had seemed settled during the period of stable pharaonic rule. Temple inscriptions began exploring more nuanced concepts about the relationship between cosmic order and earthly governance, suggesting intellectual uncertainty about fundamental principles. Popular religious practices during this period showed increasing emphasis on personal relationships with deities, rather than exclusive reliance on pharaonic mediation between divine and human realms. This democratization of religious experience, while not directly challenging royal authority, created alternative sources of spiritual guidance that reduced dependence on pharaonic interpretation of divine will. The economic systems that had sustained Middle Kingdom prosperity began showing signs of strain as agricultural production faced challenges from changing environmental conditions, while royal expenditures remained at levels established during more prosperous periods. Tax collection became more difficult as regional administrators faced competing demands from local communities and royal requirements. Trade networks that had brought exotic goods and valuable resources to Egypt experienced increasing disruption as political instability in neighboring regions affected commercial relationships that had operated reliably for centuries. These interruptions in international commerce reduced royal revenues, while creating shortages of materials essential for construction projects and ceremonial functions. Urban development projects that had enhanced living conditions throughout the kingdom during the 12th dynasty faced funding constraints that forced postponement or abandonment of planned improvements. These delays affected popular morale while creating visible evidence of declining royal capabilities that undermined confidence in pharaonic authority. The technological innovations that had advanced Egyptian capabilities during the Middle Kingdom's Golden Age continued through royal workshops and educational institutions, but the practical application of new knowledge became more difficult as resources for large-scale projects became increasingly limited. Scientific advances that might have enhanced pharaonic power remained theoretical rather than being implemented through governmental initiatives. Medical facilities established during the height of Middle Kingdom prosperity experienced reduced royal support that affected their ability to serve communities throughout the kingdom. These healthcare reductions had practical consequences for population health, while symbolically representing declining royal commitment to subject welfare that had characterized earlier pharaonic achievements. The educational systems that had trained administrators and specialists for effective pharaonic government continued operating throughout the later Middle Kingdom. But graduates increasingly found limited opportunities for advancement within royal service as bureaucratic positions became less available due to financial constraints and reduced governmental activities. These educational institutions began adapting their curricula to prepare students for careers in regional administration or private commercial enterprises, rather than focusing exclusively on royal service that had provided the primary pathway for advancement during earlier periods. This shift reflected practical recognition of changing opportunities, while gradually reducing the pool of talented individuals committed exclusively to pharaonic objectives. The architectural projects that had demonstrated pharaonic power during the Middle Kingdom's height became smaller in scale and less technically ambitious as royal resources faced competing demands from military, administrative, and ceremonial requirements. Pyramid construction, while continuing, no longer achieved the magnificent proportions that had characterized 12th dynasty monuments. Temple construction during the later Middle Kingdom emphasized renovation and maintenance of existing structures, rather than new building projects that would have demonstrated continuing royal creativity and resources. These practical priorities made economic sense, while creating less impressive visible evidence of pharaonic capabilities for both domestic and foreign audiences. The artistic achievements sponsored by royal patronage during this period maintained traditional standards of excellence while reflecting themes that suggested awareness of changing circumstances. Portrait sculptures of later Middle Kingdom pharaohs showed increasing psychological complexity that hinted at the burdens and uncertainties that divine rulers faced during more challenging times. Royal inscriptions from the later Middle Kingdom revealed more defensive rhetoric about pharaonic authority and achievements compared to the confident assertions that had characterized earlier periods. These textual changes reflected genuine concerns about maintaining traditional standards while facing circumstances that tested institutional capabilities. The festival celebrations that had provided opportunities for magnificent displays of royal authority during the Middle Kingdom's height continued throughout the later period, but with reduced magnificence that reflected resource constraints while maintaining ceremonial traditions essential for popular morale and religious observance. These religious ceremonies remained important for reinforcing pharaonic authority and popular loyalty, but their diminished scale created less impressive demonstrations of divine power that may have contributed to gradual erosion of the awe and devotion that had sustained earlier pharaonic achievements. The succession crisis that marked the transition from the 13th to the 14th dynasty, around 1725 BCE, revealed the accumulated weaknesses that had developed within pharaonic institutions during the previous century of gradual decline. Competing claimants to divine authority emerged simultaneously in different parts of the kingdom, creating the first serious fragmentation of royal power since the first intermediate period. Unlike the earlier division that had resulted from the collapse of central authority, this new fragmentation occurred while governmental institutions remained largely intact but lacked unified leadership capable of coordinating their activities effectively. Provincial administrators continue performing their duties, while uncertain about which pharaoh possessed legitimate authority to issue binding commands. The military forces that had maintained Egyptian unity and security during the Middle Kingdom's height found themselves divided between competing royal claimants, with different garrisons and units declaring loyalty to different pharaohs based on regional loyalties, personal relationships, or practical considerations about which ruler could provide better support and resources. These military divisions created immediate security vulnerabilities as frontier defenses became less coordinated, while internal conflicts absorbed resources and attention that had previously been focused on external threats. The professional armies that had projected pharaonic power throughout the ancient world became preoccupied with domestic political disputes rather than maintaining Egyptian dominance over foreign territories. The administrative efficiency that had characterized Middle Kingdom governance suffered immediate disruption as competing royal courts issued contradictory orders to the same provincial officials, creating confusion about proper procedures and legitimate authority that paralyzed governmental functions in many regions of the kingdom. Regional administrators faced impossible choices between conflicting royal commands while lacking clear guidance about which pharaoh possessed authentic divine authority. These bureaucratic difficulties created practical problems for tax collection, legal proceedings, and public works projects that affected daily life throughout the kingdom. The diplomatic relationships that had established